In a few hours, one of the most eagerly awaited video games finally goes on sale.
Preparing to rewrite retail history.
Video game is expected to have bigger first-day revenues than any movie has ever had an opening day at the box office.
Biggest retail launch in entertainment history.
In the next 72 hours, Halo 2 will be sold in 27 countries in 8 different languages. And there's going to be another 1,200 stores in London, Seoul, Tokyo, Toronto open in similar Midnight Madness events. I mean, this is bigger than a video game. This is a true entertainment phenomenon.
Video gamers across the country are anxiously awaiting the midnight release of a game called Halo 2.
45 minutes and counting for Halo 2 to go on sale.
The line right now is probably about 100 yards long.
It is the most anticipated game in entertainment history.
If you're an Xbox gamer, there's a good chance you're pretty tired right now.
I think this is going to convert people to video games, and it's going to show them that the interactive experience is far superior than the linear or passive experience of listening to a CD or watching a movie. And I think that this will be one of those things when we look back 10 years from now, they'll look back and say Halo 2 was one of those seminal moments when it shipped. Millions of people then said, I can now play a movie rather than watch a movie. And that's what it really feels like.
Halo 2, arguably the most anticipated sequel to a game of all time. Not only was it the best-selling title and most played game on the original Xbox, but it also overcame incredibly difficult odds. How could this be better than the original? While Combat Evolved wasn't a massive hit at launch, it slowly grew to become a cult classic with a dedicated following that turned even the most skeptical of people into full-on nerds practically overnight. The amount of change Combat Evolved brought to console shooters and their mechanics could only be matched by its impact on couch co-op and the multiplayer community. So, what would Halo 2 have to do to one-up its predecessor? Well, as it turns out, a hell of a lot. But arguably the most important aspect that was improved upon was the depth of its story and the risks it took, taking Halo from a sci-fi treasure hunt with 80s action movie influences to a rich and complex story that brought the series out from being a game about one man's endless quest to shoot everything in sight to a fully fleshed out living and breathing universe inhabited by characters each with their own pain, motivations, and a plethora of good one-liners.
Get tactical, Marines!
This is why Halo 2 is the perfect sequel. Hello there, guys, gals, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Leigh Paladin. Now, before we jump into the real meat and potatoes of this video, I want to flash back to the year 2006. Little Leigh Paladin was in first grade and went to spend the afternoon at his mate's house. While he was settling down in the garage turned makeshift home gym and man cave with a small tub of chocolate Yogo and a few sour warheads, my friend got up and turned on the Xbox. After a short moment of waiting, my friend asked,
"Have you played Halo?"
My instant reaction at that age was to say,
"Oh yeah, of course, my cousin has Halo on his PlayStation?"
at risk of being criticised for not knowing exactly what it was. The disc went into the tray, the screen dimmed to black, when I was greeted with this. Can I just gush about the menu for this game for a minute, because holy crap, I love it. Not only did it set the tone for Halo's menus after it, but as a kid, I had no idea what I was getting into. You'd never know Halo 2 was a shooter from this menu alone if you hadn't played the game beforehand. There were no neon crosshairs and cliche rolling snare drums or a high-intensity, adrenaline-fueled breakbeat song like other shooters and action games from the same era, just this slow, moving camera as it flies over a futuristic city with an alien ship hovering ominously over it. The music was somber, haunting even, and that mystery of not knowing what game it was you were about to play is what sucked me in so much. As someone who had never played Halo and only had a vague concept of what this series was about, I was on board right away, and I wanted to know more. The rest of that afternoon I played through Halo 2's campaign for the first time, struggling to fit the massive Duke controller in my little 6-year-old hands, taking turns of swapping the controller with my mate whenever one of us died, and as I had never played Halo before, or any first-person shooter for that matter, there was a lot of time that I wasn't holding that controller. Within a few days, Halo had consumed my life. It was all I could think about. Who was the Master Chief underneath that helmet? Where did all those weird and wacky aliens come from, and why did they hate humans? And what the fuck are the I think the one thing that kept me coming back to school was the chance to go back and play Halo 2 at my mate's place in the afternoon. I was addicted to this universe, to these characters, to the damn good music, and the gameplay. The one question that I wanted an answer to more than any other, more than even what happens next following from the cliffhanger ending, was, can I get an Xbox for Christmas? It wasn't long before Halo 2 released on Windows Vista for PC, and from there it was bye-bye Rise of Nations and Half-Life, hello Halo. Imagine my surprise when I discovered that through the power of Australian internet running at 400 kilobytes, yes, you heard me right, 400 kilobytes a second, I could connect to and play against people from all over the world. As great as the campaign was, my mind was fixated on trying to be better at Halo 2. How did I discover so many amazing, colourful insults that even Malcolm Tucker would be stunned by them?
Or I will perform a fucking living fucking autopsy on you with a fucking rusty spade, and I'll have your kidneys for fucking cufflinks.
Halo 2 server browser. Where did I learn the ropes of Halo's deceptively simple gameplay loop? Halo 2 server browser. Where did I learn every single nook and cranny of Lockout? Halo 2 server browser, and getting domed by Americans with host advantage in 1v1s. Halo 2 for so many people, myself included, was the multiplayer, and because of how well designed it was, even on the crappy Gearbox port for PC, I found myself coming back to play it day after day. The only thing that stopped me from playing Halo 2 was its younger and slightly better looking brother Halo 3. Once I got an Xbox 360, I kind of forgot about Halo 2, but with the onset of the Master Chief Collection and Halo 2 Anniversary and advanced English class that taught me how to bullshit essays and overanalyze the fuck out of Animal Farm, I started to appreciate Halo 2's campaign and story a little more. As a kid, it's all kill the demon. But as an adult, it's more and with hindsight being as great as it is, I've come to realize that Halo 2 was essentially the game that made this franchise what it is today, and the risks it took put it up on a pedestal for me as being one of the greatest games of all time. Despite how tumultuous its development might have been, and believe me, at some point I will get around to doing a full-length documentary on that, Bungie achieved the impossible. The Empire Strikes Back, Terminator 2 Judgment Day, and The Godfather Part 2. All incredible movies. Aside from being exceptionally well-made sequels to popular first installments, they also deviate from their predecessors in some rather interesting ways. I've always seen this as being the main reason for a movie or game sequel to succeed or not. Can you guess what it is? In The Empire Strikes Back, Luke Skywalker has been training to become a Jedi Knight, to live up to the legacy of his father Anakin and his mentor Obi-Wan. He's dedicated to learning the Jedi arts and has Darth Vader, the man who he believes killed the two most important men in his life, squarely in his sights. It's only when Luke is broken, battered, and defeated that he realizes that this escapade that he's been on for months now has all been for nothing, as Darth Vader is his father. Terminator 2. Following the events of the last film, our former protagonist Sarah Connor is in an insane asylum, and her son and future leader of the Resistance, John, is being targeted by a Terminator, presumably the same make and model that tried to kill Sarah almost a decade prior. John has been told about their existence for years by his mother, but never thought anything of it until today. Everything his mother said was true, it was all real, until suddenly this machine saves his life and protects him from another. The Godfather Part 2, we follow newly appointed Don Michael Corleone as he works his way through difficult territory being a mob boss, failing on just about all accounts and making all the wrong decisions compared to his father Vito, who we flash back to decades prior, facing similarly difficult decisions. All the films are based around a twist. Vader is Luke's father, Arnold's Terminator is the good guy, and a film we thought was going to be about Michael Corleone is just as much, if not more, about his dead father than it is about him. Halo 2 takes the best page of the perfect sequel's book and sets the whole premise of its story around a huge twist. The actions we took in the first game as Master Chief directly impacted the life of another, and we see firsthand what this society is like. The game is more so the Arbiter's story than it is Master Chief's, and I think it's all the better for it. The other thing that I realized is that Halo 2 didn't just take the base your story on a cool twist page, but also combines the twists from all these movies into one. Like the second Godfather, we're expecting the game to focus on a certain character when, in actual fact, it's really someone else's story with multiple parallels seen throughout. Like Empire, the Arbiter has his entire life turned upside down and everything he thought he believed in completely crushed. And like Terminator 2, the beings he was trained to fight against and thought were the villains are now the good guys. I don't know if this was something that Joseph Staten and the other writing team members at Bungie did consciously, but I thought it was worth mentioning nonetheless. To me, the most interesting part of Halo 2's story is the triangle, the dichotomy and parallels between its three most important characters, Master Chief, the Arbiter, and Tartarus, and the similarities many of them share in terms of their character traits, development, and the one thing that binds them together, their duty. Master Chief during Halo 2 is very much the embodiment of the perfect soldier. He's effective at what he does, always follows orders from his superiors without question, and the battlefield for him is very black and white, lacking shades of grey. It's either a target that needs to be killed or isn't. Chief was still very much a shell for the player to inhabit, despite his wisecracking nature.
Relax. I'd rather not piss this thing off. Demon.
Contrary to this, you have the Arbiter. While being a character who is very fleshed out from the get-go, he's still a man, or I guess elite, of few words, and only really talks when it's necessary, like the Chief. He's first and foremost motivated by his mission to prove himself to the Prophets. Most importantly though, I think Arbiter wants a good death. Sangheili culture shares many similarities to that of feudal Japan, where death was considered a better option than dishonor, and the Arbiter has suffered the greatest dishonor of them all.
But your inability to safeguard Halo was a colossal failure.
Nay, it was heresy.
He was tortured by his own kind, by people he used to outrank and lead, and when he's brought before the prophets of truth and mercy, I genuinely think he means this when he says,
I am already dead.
Indeed.
Or at least he wishes he was. When the Arbiter is informed of Chief's arrival at Delta Halo while trying to collect the activation index, it's clear to me that Arbiter is very much torn between his duty to the Prophets and the Covenant, while also wanting closure for his failures. This is where the cracks in the armor, as it were, start to show, and this is only made worse by the Arbiter's betrayal at the hands of Tartarus. The Arbiter and Tartarus are interesting in the sense that they're basically the same person, just at different stages in their lives. Tartarus, like the Arbiter, was tasked with safeguarding Halo and making sure the Great Journey could commence. He's a treasured instrument of the Prophets like Arbiter once was, and is blind to the manipulative grasp they have on him. But most importantly, he's a blunt instrument thrown into perilous scenarios and trusted to come out on top. Sound familiar? Tartarus never goes through an earth-shattering revelation like the Arbiter, and thus never escapes the clutches of the Prophets and dies loyal, albeit stupid, and potentially doubting his core beliefs. The Arbiter can break free from this cycle of manipulation and lies, but only after losing essentially everything he holds dear. I can't say this with more sincerity, but Arbiter literally loses everything in Halo 2. He loses his faith in the religion he believed was true for his entire life. He loses his rank and by extension his power. The trust he places in the Prophets is lost. His species and brothers in arms are Order 66th. It's just really rough to watch. One of the most haunting moments ever in a game for me is probably this sequence in Uprising. You're looking out over Delta Halo's control room, seeing the corpses of elites scattered across the ground as the brutes taunt and desecrate the bodies. And it's all capped off with this tremendous track, Heavy Price Paid. I'd love to know what Marty O'Donnell's brief was for writing this piece because it's just devastating. Any other game this would be shown in a cutscene, but Bungie instead gave us the option to play through this section on our own and either take the time to stop and realize what's going on and soak up the reality of the situation, or blitz past it. It's kind of understated. The game doesn't stop dead and hold your hand through it, it just shows you and lets you deal with it however you want. Arbiter's appeal to Tartarus is also so genuine because he knows. He knows that they're essentially the same person, and it feels like Arbiter isn't just telling Tartarus to pack it in, but he's also finally coming to the realization of it himself. Any doubts he might have had about what the Gravemind told him about Halo's true purpose, or any attachment he might have had to his life and duty before becoming the Arbiter, is gone in this moment. It's as hard for him to say it to himself and confirm that his whole life up until this point has been a lie as it likely is for him to try and reason with the man who took so much from him and left him for dead. He doesn't say, the prophets have betrayed you, he says us. Dropping the anonymity and relating to Tartarus, seeing him as an equal and no longer a soldier fighting for the opposite side. In this moment, he's no longer Thel 'Vadam, disgraced leader of the Covenant, responsible for butchering millions, doing the dirty work of the prophets. He's the arbiter of the truth, and now the middleman and peacemaker between the elites and humans, enemies for decades. Ironically enough, living up to the 2 different dictionary meanings of his name. Arbiter has something to fight for again, an honorable cause, and finds redemption not by doing the work of the prophets, the corrupt bureaucrats who put him in such a difficult position in the first place, but by repenting for the many sins he's committed against humanity. The Arbiter underwent a similar development of character as Master Chief in Halo 4 almost a whole decade earlier, an upstanding loyal soldier who always succeeded and had a duty to protect their kind, whatever the cost. Where Arbiter failed, Chief's luck pulled him through, but like the Arbiter, he eventually loses everything he holds dear. Instead of his brothers and fellow elites, it's the other Spartan 2s, friends and comrades. Instead of losing his religion, it's of course the one thing he believes in most, Cortana, which leads him down the path of disobeying orders and no longer being the UNSC's most treasured instrument. So, in summary, how to make an excellent villain? Make them the mirror image of your hero, or vice versa. Now, the story is all well and good, but what about the gameplay? A great story is worth nothing if the game isn't fun. And to me, Halo 2 is probably the most enjoyable Halo experience of them all. Halo 2 takes what worked so well about Combat Evolved and dials it up to 11, while refining the core mechanics of the first game into something that feels more smooth and just better to play overall. CE always had this weird, floaty kind of feel to it, almost like it took a moment to catch up to the movement of your thumbsticks. You could barely fall 10 feet without taking fall damage, and the weapon sandbox, while varied with each weapon having a utility of some kind, was small. It feels weird to say that Combat Evolved only had 8 weapons, whereas Halo 2 doubles that number to 16, with 2 of which being variations on existing guns. And, did I mention dual wielding? Graphically, Halo 2 was held up quite well, in my opinion. Compared to another popular sci-fi shooter that came out that year, Halo 2 doesn't quite have the same attention to detail or crazily accurate facial animations of Half-Life 2, but it does have something that Halo has always excelled at providing. Vistas. No, definitely not that Vista. These vistas.
It's like a postcard. Dear Sarge, kicking ass in outer space, wish you were here.
Bungie and even 343 have always been experts in making the player feel small compared to the environments around them, and being able to capture the familiar yet alien beauty of the Halo rings and other mysterious locales we play in. It's no surprise that Halo 2 is no exception to the rule. In fact, it's probably got the most beautiful pieces of scenery and skyboxes of any Halo game. Coupled with Marty O'Donnell's ethereal music that subtly accompanies what you're looking at, there are some moments where you've just gotta stop and take in your surroundings. I find myself frequently hopping back and forth between classic and anniversary graphics, and equally enjoying both for their own reasons. It honestly doesn't matter what version of the game you play on, Halo 2 is just an overall incredible looking game. Its vast open landscapes are only really matched by its unintentional openness of its levels. Does it have the same exploratory nature and semi-open world feel of Combat Evolved? Not exactly. Halo 2 is certainly more linear than its predecessor, but I'd argue that for those who do want to go off the beaten path and explore, Halo 2 has got plenty to offer, arguably even more than CE. I feel like Bungie's motto for developing the game was literally just, you want a breakout game? Fuck it. We'll even put an energy sword here to make it worth your while. The only thing that Bungie I think should have cared about more was legendary difficulty, because... What the fuck? Well, it's stupid. I mean, what else do you want me to say? Oh, you wanted a Jackal Sniper Death compilation? Yeah, because that hasn't been done 100 times before whenever someone talks about this game. Hilarious and original. I think the beauty of Halo 2 is that you can enjoy it in many different ways. If you want it to be a dumb, fun, playable action movie with good one-liners and awesome cutscenes, you can play it that way and enjoy it for its simplicity like Combat Evolved. But you can also look deeper into its story and find plenty there to think about. Halo 2 is probably the most important game ever for me, as without it, I never would have discovered Halo and likely never would have gotten into gaming in general. It's certainly the game in the series that I have the most nostalgia for, and it's one of the first things I think about when someone asks me what my favorite parts were of the early 2000s. Despite only being a kid when this came out, I was well aware of the game's impact on the world. Even here in Australia, I remember walking past what I think might have been an EB Games store with the bright orange Halo 2 banners and posters hung up and plastered everywhere for literal months after the game released. It was still that insanely popular and beloved. Playing it always puts my mind at ease, and it feels like a little slice of that era. It's a time capsule. It ushered in a golden age for console gaming and set the bar ridiculously high for shooters and just games in general that followed. The changes it made to online multiplayer cannot be understated, and I still prefer to play it over its sequels like Reach, 4, 5, and even Infinite. It went the extra mile with its story that rivals cinematic blockbusters in terms of its presentation and characters. It built a world ripe for the picking for multiple follow-up stories and expanded media for years to come. And I don't think it's an understatement to say that Halo 2 changed the world. It wasn't just the perfect sequel to Combat Evolved, but also the perfect game for the era it was made in. And I'd gladly take a trip back in time to become enthralled with this amazing series, starting with Halo 2, all over again.
Our big green style cannot be defeated! Hoorah!
Boo.
Fate had us meet as foes.
How you doing?
But this ring will make us brothers. If they came to hear me beg, they will be disappointed. Are you sure? Kill the demon!
Master Chief, you mind telling me what you're doing on that ship?
Sir, finishing this fight.
I will ask, and you will answer.
All right. Shoot.